Hello and welcome to Absolutely Not. My name is Kay Stroll. My pronouns are they, she, he, and you can learn more about me at my website, www.kstroll.com. Real quick, if you appreciate the work that I do here or elsewhere, please visit the Support the Mission page of my website. There are several options to choose from to support my work, so please choose one. The keywords for this episode are privilege, professionalism, and tokenism. I encourage y'all to look up the definitions of these words and compare them to the definitions that you carry with you on a daily basis. If you need help comparing, please let me know. This episode is sponsored by Headspace. Headspace has one mission: to improve the health and happiness of the world through meditation, sleep, stress, and mindfulness. Find out more about Headspace at the link in the show notes. Today's episode is titled, "The Professional is Political." I know, suck it in. You're about to get into it with us. I'm excited to talk about this with our amazing special guest, Niru Ravichandren, they, them. Niru is embarking on a 2-year Master in Social Work degree. Yes. Niru has a passion for social justice and mental health through use of nuanced and intersectional frameworks. They have also worked and volunteered in many areas such as being the treasurer of Melbourne Chess Club, teaching chess to young children, and working as a copywriter/editor and researcher within the field of neurodiversity. Niru believes that the power of lived experience can too often go underappreciated, even if it speaks volumes. They identify as South Indian, queer, non-binary, pansexual, neurodivergent, and MAD. Niru, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I just quickly want to say I really dedicate a lot of my, progress and knowledge to a special person who might be watching this podcast. I'm not going to mention them because I think they're pretty shabby, and they're really young. But yeah, I dedicate my knowledge that I really have. A lot of it today is because of them. So yeah, if you're watching, I really appreciate you.
What the heck? That's such an amazing way to start an episode. I love that so much. Is this a person you said you've learned from, or they've learned from you?
I've learned from. Yeah.
Nice. And they have y'all talked about the professional being political or how?
Yeah, I've talked about the episode. I think they know the saying that I'm taking from. So yeah, we've talked about it.
Nice. And did they assist you at all with the title, or like how did you come up with the title of the episode?
So because of the conversation we had earlier, there was like a lot of topics that I sort of like derailed on, and it all came to that one center point. With, you know, like there's a saying, the personal is political, and the saying has its roots in like the radical feminism movement, the second wave. And whilst it's less about the ideology for me about feminism, because I have a very, complex relationship with feminism because of some racist and transphobic and queerphobic roots that can take place. But it's more of the symbolic meaning, the idea that a lot of oppressive structures are like disconnected from professionalism. I think the idea that professionalism is apolitical, that's the rhetoric I was going for. Yeah.
And before this conversation, I didn't really think about that. People say that all the time, like, make sure you don't talk about politics in the workplace, or like, this is a professional space, so we don't talk about X through like Z, but you can talk about like, so weird. Have you ever experienced that? Somebody telling you like, oh no, that is this, so please don't bring it here.
Yeah, all the time. So like, I'm like a student, but I've also worked, and I faced it both in the academic world and the professional world. But yeah, like I started off in finance and accounting, and started off there to actually going into fields where it was important to be pretty political, because I went into the field of neurodiversity. that's a politicized topic, and social work as is now, but there's always like, I guess, tone policing, and that idea that if you're going to be political, you should be only in a certain way. Yeah, so all the time.
And when people talk about politics, or when people say, oh, don't bring politics here, it's often they're saying, don't bring your identities here, because a lot of our politics, or the things that we're talking about, policies and processes, are heavily tied to our identities. One of the things I learned when I started speaking publicly about mental health is mental health space is dominated by white people, like white people. And so they would always be like, hey, don't talk about polarizing topics in this space, because we want to keep it a mental health space. You work a lot in neurodiversity, mental health, neurodiversity. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, it was huge. It was so huge. I think I was the only brown person in a whole array of white employees there. And yeah, it's so like, it's such a huge thing, and it's such a disservice, because the narratives, especially around autism, is that it's just a boys' club. It's just a white, like, now, people think things are changing because more women are part of the discussion, but like, it's never been about non-white people. So like, it crosses over so many political lines, just making it white disability. And the naivety I had with being apolitical at the onstart of going into the disability space really came around to bite me in the butt, to say, to put it explicitly. Like, it's yeah, it wasn't good. So that's when I really wanted to take this journey and realize the nuances of how it worked.
Mm-hmm. I love the words that you're using. You use the word disservice. I also like bite in the butt, because I'm a visual learner. But who is it a disservice to when you remain apolitical in all of these spaces?
Oh, it's like, it is a disservice to me in a lot of ways, but I think also, which is really important, and that I'm learning, because I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form, it is a disservice a lot to other people that, that naivety affects. Because, yeah, politics isn't really as reduced as it often is in mainstream discourse. Like, it's incredibly nuanced. And I think that the way my identity, or who I am, is like politicized is very nuanced, because as I said, I'm South Indian, and that's that has a lot of politicized racial elements that affects a lot of communities who are Indian and who are not. So yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because the first word that popped in my brain was contagious, because you keep saying to be naive, and I wrote down ignorance as well, because hand in hand, but it's contagious. Like, if you tell people, oh no, it's okay to be ignorant here, it's okay to be apolitical here, and people are going to pass that on. When you were I want to say, when you were sick with apoliticalness, did you pass it on to other people?
That's like the insidious part, I think. Yeah, in a lot of ways I did, and a lot of people pass it on without realizing how or in what ways they pass it on, because you just don't see the information. You don't know until you've really embarked it, and then hindsight just hits you. Because I think there's this idea, especially under like the white gaze of professionalism, that apolitical equals logical, logical equals good, like logic is masculinized, if that's a word, but it's seen as like, the perfect white, like it's seen as like the white way to be. You be logical, you don't show emotions, which is tied to like not showing who you are, allowing yourself to present in your way. And you can never be apolitical without siding with oppression. It's just not, it's not doesn't work like that. And so like it's almost like you lie to yourself. Yeah.
Okay, I hope whoever needed to hear that is digesting it slowly. Because I know the first time I ever heard that we've been told a lot of lies, that politeness and kindness and all of the things that whatever white person told you was like, oh, this is the standard here, is a lie and a disservice to so many people. The thing that I wrote down, and as a non-binary person, you probably agree with, is that's a lot of binaries that are pushed on like some, like white is good and everyone else is bad. And if you're not speaking in a robot monotone voice and not showing emotions, then you're bad. How are you breaking away from the binary, specifically like political or apolitical, because it's very nuanced, on a daily basis?
Um, I just want to unpack a lot with that.
Yes.
Like, totally agree. I totally agree. And that's just well put. But yeah, I think there's like so much to tangle because like I think deep down we know it's not binary. Like under the white gaze, I'm sure it's the same in your culture, but even in my like language, like the way we express things, I was talking about it with people close to me, and it's quite expressive. So like I come from like a Tamil background, that's the language, and we're very expressive in the way we talk. So this idea that you know, things should be this like cold, white, non-emotional, stoic way is, it just didn't really sit with me. But yeah, I was really lying to myself and seeing things in binary. So back to that point, the more and more that I'm aware that things aren't apolitical, I have not only the language, but I'm not lying to myself that things are binary or like acting so much that they are. Because I think also in English, we don't have the language to easily go outside the binaries. It's really not available. Um, and and I think that's a lot tied with how gender is viewed as a binary, which hasn't always been the case with a lot of cultures that has been erased. Um, like Aboriginal culture that I'm living on their land. But yeah, so I think like with that, sometimes like, you know, if I have to pass, I pass, or there's elements where the pain hits so close to home, you just hit that freeze mode and you just be kind to yourself afterwards. But in the life and with the people I really appreciate, it's about creating that space to break through those binaries. That's what I learn and feel liberated by.
I hate this. Sorry. I am a baby trans thing, and I'm still, you know, like it's you're forever still doing it. You're always going to be transitioning. Shout out Ethan Levine, who's going to be a guest coming up. Him. Um, he gave me the words baby trans thing, and I just like your words mean so much to me because our languages and our cultures have accepted us like centuries ago, the existence of us centuries ago. And for some reason, we are just now allowing ourselves to come home. And it's so wild and it's so weird, the generations that like already knew that, and then like the generations in between who are just like, oh no, we like no. It's okay, yeah, let's get past this because
Well, I just want to say like, so like I get you, I completely get you. You're like not alone in this. Like the more I know, it's liberating to have that truth, like not to tell myself lies is painful. Like I'm sure letting it out actually is so much better. But I just really relate with you now, like that, like anger that's there, but then like appreciative of the wisdom that still holds, like despite all that, despite the colonization, all of that, like there is still passed down, that knowledge is there. But like you said, there's that generation that thinks it's traditional to be backwards and oppressive, and it's always been that way. And it's just not the case. Like with the misogyny in like India, they think India's always been misogynistic, cis heterosexual. And I'm like, are you joking me? It was the British that, what is it like, put so many bans on people exposing their breasts, and the sari was actually worn without the blouse. So the traditional sari is actually exposing your breasts because it's not a sexualized thing until the British came and put tax on our breasts for exposing it, like banned homosexuality, banned all that, like all that culture. And yeah, I get it. I get frustrated all the time when I see it. Just
and I hope whoever is listening to this is taking the permission that they need to go home. Like, go and talk to different generations. Go look into your own cultures and your own identities. Don't allow yourself to be pushed to the binary of apolitical. Be political as shit about your identities and do more research into why you're being asked to be apolitical. When you started doing more research and started allowing yourself to be more political in more spaces, were you greeted were people happy?
so the thing with me, like, I think I just got at one point, which really like got to me, is like I couldn't really be very apolitical and very social. So a lot of my life was about cutting ties with a lot of people and isolating myself, which wasn't really bad at the start, because I didn't really, like, deep down I knew I wasn't apolitical, but that's what I was convincing myself. So that was that turmoil. And then when I really like built a new life in a huge way for myself, I just started making connections that were inherently so much more political. So in that way, like, my environment already drastically changed. But still, it's not perfect. Like, we do not live in anywhere near a perfect world that it could be, with all the oppression. But still, like, yeah, it is still a journey, and it's still very hard. Sometimes having to police myself. I know, like, sometimes if little bits are let out, people have a very confused reaction. They're like, what is going on? What is she saying? I can't comprehend it. I think they itself don't understand how complex and nuanced being not being apolitical is. And so they get a bit, I've mostly had shock, but you can also get, I'm sure a lot of people had horrible experiences as well.
I'm so sorry that people are so confused whenever you open your mouth to just share knowledge and insight to what you go through. And like, that's what politics, like, I'm trying to exist and be alive anyway. But what popped up and I wrote down was artificial harmony, which is something I picked up like a while ago. It's in my notes. But and it's the idea that you can like pretend to be in harmony with people. The connections that you had when you were apolitical, how do they differ from the connections that you are creating, like the people you're meeting now in the very political space that you are in?
Ironically, it's so much more harmonious. Like, it's just so much more safer. I'm not walking on eggshells. I genuinely don't, like, because I don't internalize it. And also, like, yeah, I don't hate myself at all that much. It's not about internalizing those oppressions that they want you to keep the harmony. I know also in Australia, like, they rabbit a lot that it's multicultural and, all that, but it's incredibly racist here. We just don't use the R word, racism. Like, I know in the US it's a bit more mixed, like, really depends also what state you're in, what place. But yeah, even in like Melbourne and Sydney, those really progressive places, we just are in social work where this is so important. We use it sporadically or as long as it keeps harmony and also like allows for people to have a white savior complex and feel like, they're good. There's always a pandering to that.
And I mean, I've been in Australia a couple times, but it's kind of like here in America where if they were to use the R word, then they would have to accept what they did, which like Aboriginal, like they would have to accept so much of what's happening and what's going on, and they just don't want to do that. So instead, they're just like, oh, we have these policies for a reason, but it's actually racist.
I, I mean, like, I lived in England, so I'm not saying England is at all better, but also we're in like America and Australia, they're settler colonial countries. Like, you know, it's really like it's blatant lip service when they're just like, you know, very performative and we're not giving the like they're not giving the land back. But I think it's also super like nuanced without it just being like Indigenous versus white people. That's where like our identities come to play. Something that really got me was when a white person like, you know, made a research survey in attempts to be like inclusive towards Aboriginal people and like uh, make awareness about like their health issues and stuff. And then wrote on a survey for anyone to fill out that how do you feel like, do you feel guilty about your ancestors, you know, coming and colonizing the country? And I was like, my ancestors? They did what now? Like, that's news to me. Like, I think, like you said, the binary, there's a lot of this idea that things work in binary, like you have the black and white. Like, where's the room to talk about like the unique experience of racism for black people, the unique experience of racism for Asian people, the divisiveness between all of that that's created by white supremacy, but continuously weaponized, like it's created by us. You know, like Asians are so racist, and it's like, no, our proximity to whiteness, you know, incentivizes anti-blackness and all that, but it's not, you shouldn't use it to promote anti-Asian hate just to prop up whiteness. Well, you know, that nuance is just not seen.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I didn't say any of that. Never said all of that. Not to place it on you, but I am so appreciative of you saying that because yeah, there's a lot of okay, this is the space to be political, but there's a lot of anti-Asian propaganda, like, oh, please stop Asian hate and please stop, but there's not a lot of like internal work being done in the Asian community at all.
no.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Cool.
but I just wanted to say, like, that's the thing that really annoys me about Australia, like the idea that we're multicultural because there's a lot of Asians without placing responsibility on any anti-blackness that we have or colorism that we have even amongst us, like brown, East Asian, and understanding where white supremacy plays in that. So Orientalism, fetishizing us, the model minority myth, look it up if you need to, because they're really, really, really important to see it as a nuanced subject. But yeah, it is definitely our responsibility. And it's something, that's why I gave my dedication in the first place to this very special person who really made me aware of all that nuance.
Oh, I hope this really special person sees this when this is published. But I'm so appreciative of you breaking down so many binaries that are occurring all around us on a daily basis. And if we're not aware of that, then we're just going to keep sipping it. We're just going to keep sipping on the binary, and we're going to end up hating ourselves or hating people that are literally part of this, like being harmed the same way or even more so, like you talked about. For the people who are listening to this, who are thinking, okay, maybe I start tipping my toes and being political in places. Maybe I start being myself. Maybe I stop hating myself in spaces. What would be the top 3 tips you would share with them about starting to be professional and political?
So one is it's a journey. Don't just expect yourself to do a 180, like wake up to a 180 and that's it, because it can really backfire. Like it can cause you to further, I guess, internalize, not do the work, get caught up in a lot of bad nuanced rhetoric. So that's the first point. The second point would be to, I guess, like for me, it was like consuming and reading a lot of content critically as well, and intersectionally, including intersectionality critically, but like, yeah, about how things are, oppression is linked, and overlap, and it can't be, dissected into its single parts without causing a lot of damage as well, if not done carefully. And also another thing is, a lot of the work cannot be done on your own, and that can cause a lot of frustration thinking it can. Slowly create community, whether it be like you have to put on this facade professionally and it happens personally until you're safe for it to permeate into your professional sphere. Do it and bring that community, and it's going to take time for you to do it, but just let it happen slowly.
Damn, those were good. Those were really good. The second one I love so much because since the summer of 2020, a lot of people have been talking more about these polarizing topics in a lot more spaces. But it's so very important to be critical about who the fuck is behind this Instagram account, like that's putting out like about like, oh, don't be racist to everybody, or like, and if they're talking about everybody, then it's probably a white person behind that account. Because why? Like, they need to be specific in who they're talking about. They need to be able to connect with the content that they're putting out. Please. Oh my gosh, I learned that the hard way as well.
No, I learned that. And that special person also made me like, they're super critical. You can never like be critical enough. Look into the source, like you said, just look into. And a lot of times when anti-racism work is centered around white people, it can be very harmful if they're profiting or, gaining from it without doing the work that will cause you pain. And like, you might get defensive at first, but like, it might cause you a bit of loss because you've got honor and privilege, and it's not something you're used to giving it up. But and I'm not going to take any credit for this, but a lot of people talked about it, so they can look it up. But a lot of Black women talked about criticizing Brené Brown, and so if you want to look up some of those white savior complex that seems on the surface like they're doing the ally work, critically look into that. Yeah.
I am very rarely disappointed in having somebody as a guest, and I am just so fucking glad I had you as a guest. Like, I'm so glad you were here as a guest. Thank you so much for everything you have shared today. Are there any last minute sprinkles that you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
I just want to say, likewise, like, it has been amazing to have this safe space professionally as well while talking about that. I really appreciate the work, the emotional labor it takes to do the work, like community you've put in here, because I know some of these people from your podcast and I follow their work, including yours. So, for people listening, please just look at a lot of these amazing content outside of me in this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Like, I am intentional about the space I create. So it means a lot when people say like, oh yeah, that's the type of space you're creating. Like, I feel it. Niru's information is going to be in the show notes when this is published. Please reach out to them. Do you want people to connect with you on LinkedIn? Or?
Sure. Yeah, you can. Should I send my information over for you to send them my way?
I'll definitely have it in the show notes. And if you don't want them to connect with you, you don't have to. But thank you so much for being a guest on here. And to everybody who's listening, please keep setting those boundaries and saying absolutely not to anything and everything unaligned. We will see you next time. Bye.